You're up, Commissioner.
All right, Bannock County Commissioners are back in session, and we're here as a work session with the Planning and Development staff to talk about the upcoming ordinance rewrite and to specifically talk about energy ordinances and their proposal and to seek direction from the council. So, Hal, Tristan, the floor is yours.
Tristan Borkwin, Assistant Planning Director. So we, after our last work session discussing what direction we wanted to move forward with the alternative energy ordinances, we had originally discussed just creating a separate ordinance so that the existing ordinance could move on its existing timeline, and then we would work on the alternative energy somewhat simultaneously. After I went back to the office and attempted to start doing that, it seemed like we were going to run into the same issue that we have now, which is multiple ordinances crossing over the same information, and then we create redundancies and lose clarity, which is what our ultimate goal of rewriting the ordinance and combining them into one really is, to provide that clarity and conciseness in one solid ordinance document. So instead, I have before you just a chapter that we would propose to place in the land use and development ordinance that would be the alternative energy provisions, but would still be within the overall document. So all definitions would still be together. The conditional use permit requirements would still be in the same ordinance document. And I think it would help provide some clarity. So I think we just would like to present that to you, make sure we're heading in the right direction, see if you guys have any concerns, comments, questions moving forward.
And I like that it's its own chapter. I mean, that's what I didn't want. I didn't want it crossing over, and it seemed like last time it was intertwined.
Yes.
And that made it very confusing to me. I like that this is its own chapter. Reading through it, I mean, there's always some concerns, some questions and stuff. And that's why this is a draft.
Correct.
So now, are you wanting what my concerns are in this right now, or just a direction to keep going? What's the request?
Either or, and possibly both. Share with us your counsel if you need to, or any of your comments or concerns that we should address as we continue to move forward.
Well, and maybe before you do that, just to also give you our process moving forward, what we have planned. So Emma was able to draft a survey for us that she has made live on our website. We already have, as of this morning, 140 survey responses back. One of the questions is regarding alternative energy sources and whether people would like it or not like it. And then when we go to our public open houses, we are staging it this way to have one separate table for alternative energy regulations, so that we are receiving information for that specific thing separate from everything else, because that was one of our issues with trying to get feedback for the comprehensive plan. Everybody wanted to talk about the potential solar that was happening at the same time. Mm-hmm. So we thought to avoid that situation this time, we would have one person dedicated to that table for the open house, where they could ask questions, take comments, suggestions, concerns that wouldn't skew results for the rest of the document.
One of my, I know this is what's always been one of my concerns, is the decommissioning. And I don't think we define what a decommissioning is enough here. The decommissioning process involves the shutdown, removal, and repurposing of solar installations. And to me, there needs to be I'll just say that I've watched the cement plant shut down, and now we have a gravel pit out there because they sold a couple of rocks every year. So it didn't get decommissioned because of a little loophole, in my opinion. So I don't, that's one of the strong points with me, is the decommissioning, and how do we close any loopholes that if that place starts to shut down, or so, it's gonna get dismantled, and it's gonna be taken care of. You know, that's just one of the concerns that I have.
Isn't that in subsection A with 1 through 8? Does that not
So
address
A-
that concern?
The overall document.
That tells them what they have to do, to me, but what if they say, well, I still got this power, or I still, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, if you're gonna produce less than 25% of the power, is that decommissioned? Or even if you leave 10% still going, is that still a line
Yeah,
side?
that's my concern is that these companies will find out a way to not do what it says in all the rest of them.
Got you.
And that's what I want to make sure that they do what they say. And I don't know if there's anybody else has in their ordinances out there, a stronger commitment to that, but that's still one of my places that I feel like we're not quite there.
Valid concern. Real quickly, this document that you look at the very front was basically the conditional use permit process that we structured over the 6-month period when we were talking about solar and creating a solar ordinance. So Tristan has gone and modified so that this is a process for all alternative energy.
Which I like that. I thought that was well.
The issue that Commissioner Moser brings up is a valid concern that perhaps now that we have nuclear and wind back into the equation, decommissioning really needs to be studied longer, harder, with more fervor, and find out what does or doesn't work. All of these are relatively new, shall we say, and especially with the concept of small nuclear eventually being introduced into society, there's a lot of still unknowns
Yeah.
about decommissioning, so we'll continue to go down that path, trying to figure out the what ifs and the what abouts. So
And then the next part would be the 2.8 and 2.9. I mean, there's not a lot there when it talks about the other two sources.
Yes, I have a lot of thoughts in my head for those. I just didn't have time to type them out before we met today, so.
Okay.
There will be additional regulations that don't necessarily make sense for solar that would need to be addressed for the other two options, so.
But generally speaking, the direction he took for solar is applicable.
To all of them.
To
Yeah,
those.
these would just be in addition to the rest of the document. You would also have to do these things.
Yeah.
And I thank you. I mean, this is above and beyond. I mean, you've done a lot. And after I went to a session with Idaho Power and the requirements and things that they are facing with getting rid of coal power, getting rid of all the other sources, I mean, wanting to take dams out and stuff. We have to be forward thinking. And so thank you for your work, but it is a big project and parts of it are brand new. Parts of it we can learn from people's mistakes, but
Couple quick questions I had then. On section 2.7, the setbacks, number 4, is that adequate? You've got 100 feet from the edge of public right-of-ways, and then 150 feet from residential dwellings, 150 feet from Portneuf Rivers, Marsh Creek. Is that
we
enough?
spent a large amount of time when this was originally developed studying setbacks, whether it be from diagrams, looking at maps, looking at particular areas sensitive to the rim and the river, etc., where these facilities potentially could go. We're very comfortable with those numbers.
Okay.
and on that part myself, I was thinking, well, because it is a conditional use, we can set other requirements if that piece of ground has something unique.
If you found there was something sensitive about it and you said in the conditions that, oh, by the way, it says this in the ordinance, however, in this particular instance, we're going to require you 200 feet based upon these reasons. Yep.
We talk about
Easily-
marshes or
easily,
whatever.
yep,
And the
easily
same
done.
with fence and fence height, as I read through that. We could do the same type deal, depending on what the area was.
Correct.
As you stated, Commissioner Moser, being forward-thinking and addressing these particular items, I don't believe that they are going to go away as society continues to develop and change, as it always does. I think it's wise to be in front of rather than behind. And we don't know exactly. I believe Commissioner Huff has been exposed, maybe all of you have been exposed to the small nuclear technology that is being developed. I do know from conversation that INL here locally is at the forefront of developing some of that technology. I have actually been approached twice now by other members of Bannock County that have researched and have spent time looking at these small reactor facilities, small enough that you probably wouldn't even recognize what it is, that could literally power a city the size of Downey, and you would never even know that that was their power source. It's really an interesting technology that's starting to develop and come forward. So,
Yeah, I don't know a lot about it, but I have some, and that I'm very interested in.
there is a pretty good sense of excitement out there for that technology. So that's why we took the direction from the commission that we should include this. We have some basics. FYI, you're talking to two people whose minds race faster than we can produce at times, and we apologize for that. It's been interesting to shift. I appreciated Tristan's clarity to say, remember what we experienced here. Yep. We should do it this way because. Yep. And so this is, and she borrows, I hate to say she borrows my words, and I'm glad that she does, but one of the items that we lack is clarity and conciseness in the existing ordinance. And she has used that as her guide as she's continued to structure language, and it's turning out to be an incredibly good document. Now we want to get to better and best within the next 90 days.
Well, I appreciate it, because the first time we started going through this, we had a deadline. And now we can think it out. In my opinion, we need to involve the public, get their input. Just like you said, you got it out there on the site and people are responding. So, thank you.
I don't know, Tristan, I haven't had conversation with my team relative to time frame and meetings. We've talked about getting them scheduled, one for North and one for South County. One will be held at our office for the public to come and review the documents that we're producing and gain public input. And then the other one that we're trying to organize will be in Marsh Valley at the high school, just in the foyer, just as you go in, and get those two set up so that we can gain face-to-face public input and not just online. So,
I just have one more quick question on the determination of scale, section 2.5. I can't remember, but in the land use chart, does it dictate small scale, large scale? Where is that defined?
It does, yes.
Okay, that is in that land use chart.
It's in the land use chart, and then
'Cause
the actual
large
scale
is like 10
is.
megawatts or something
Yep.
like that? Okay.
Yep, and it's also in the definitions. That determination of scale is really just to say, we don't want a developer coming in and saying, well, it's 3 different parcels, so I have 3 small
Correct.
scale facilities. We want it to say the whole project is 1 scale, not breaking out by parcel.
And
So,
will nuclear and wind kind of follow the same size?
Yes.
They'll both be like 10
Yep.
megawatts represents?
Yep, exactly.
Okay, well, I see you got a long list of questions, so.
I do, some of you, and thanks for this. And I'll be the first one to admit, I'm in your boat. I'm seeing things from a different perspective. I mean, this is new, relatively speaking, for all of us. But my question of it is, and I go back to that setback requirements. I think there should be a different setback requirements, whether it's for somebody who's putting a solar farm in their backyard versus a commercial/industrial.
Correct.
And
Yes.
I know you probably refer to it in the main one, but this is so particular to this, and that's where what you alluded to right there is we're talking different sizes. For the most part, somebody that wants to put a solar panel on their barn or whatever it is, I think, but when we're talking commercial and industrial, and you're defining it by output, what about size? How many acres? Or what I'm saying is, because a nuclear could be in a microwave oven. But if we're talking wind, holy cow. But if we're talking solar, we're talking probably numbers of acres. And I wonder if we need to somehow incorporate that into the different sizes because of the setback requirements. And I guess the other question I had combines it. If we're combining a bunch of landowners into a single project, does the setback requirement is each individual property line or as a project?
It would be as a project, which
Okay.
is where that determination of scale
Okay.
would come into play for
And
that.
I would anticipate that we should have the flexibility that if, for instance, 3 or 4 properties join together in a project, they're still owned separately as far as properties, but the project is a project. I could see us saying, okay, because of the proximity to this particular house, and maybe it's the only one here that maybe we're looking at 300 feet. We have that ability to, in the conditional use, to say, fine, in the course of this, your setback requirement is going to be 300 feet on this location, right? Because we're going to be talking as a project, not individual. Because I would assume, and that if they are congruent properties, why would you need a setback for the property line of one and the other one because as a project, you would think you'd be able to run right over the top of the property line without having a setback requirement and losing that 50 feet or the 100 feet. It doesn't make economies of scale. So somehow I think we need to look into that and address it. And again, because I think if we look at a project, and we've all driven by them, we can't just stop here, skip 50 feet for this property line, skip another 50 feet and start that again. It's not economically feasible. So I think we need to talk project setback requirements, maybe another paragraph or something that if it meets the large scale, that we get some guidelines. I would love to have this, and I don't know how you're going to do it, to where much of the variance stuff you could solve on your level rather than having to come to the commissioners every time. Because that's where it should be. If it could be solved there by the appropriate language in there, I think that saves us all a bunch of time. So I would like to see a little more language in there about scale, a little more language if we do have a project. And I think you started to define that a little bit in that, but I think we could flesh that out a little bit more about how we define a project. And then the setbacks are different for that than it would be an individual property owner that just wants to throw up a big solar panel in his backyard. I just think we have to, if we're making an all-inclusive one, we have to put an extra paragraph or 2 in there to maybe help define that. Otherwise, we're going to be, at every conditional use permit, we're going to be all over the place, and that's not fair either. So that's one question, and I know you probably don't have the answer for that, but I would love to see that in there.
So we do have right now in the zoning chapter of the land use ordinance, we still have the placement of personal wind and solar power facilities.
Which I think is going to take most of that.
Yeah, so
You guys will
that'll
deal
take
with all
most
of
of
that.
that out. Would you prefer this chapter be labeled commercial alternative energy, so there's not that lack of clarity of whether this applies to personal properties?
I would like that designation. I think it would be easier to edit. I think, because we're going to learn something in the next 10 years that we don't know today. I just think that if this is in its own chapter, its own version, we're going to be able to fine tune this one without having to mess with the big, I don't want to call it the big beautiful ordinance that, is meant to take care of 90% of all of the issues. But I think we don't know enough about this, and so I think we need that flexibility to be able to pull up a particular part of this ordinance and say, yeah, based on what we know now, we need to amend that one.
Okay.
So I would like to see commercial, industrial, however the going word is, in this particular energy thing, because I think it's going to manifest itself over the next 10 years. So just, that one was one, and I guess the other, the setback requirement, the nuclear has a setback requirement of 1 mile. So is that for the size of a bread box, or, there's no variation there, and is 1 mile enough? Is it too much? I don't know enough about that.
We don't know yet.
And that's
Yeah.
why those kind of things, I think, should be in this separate chapter so that we can learn from it and edit from it. Because I don't know whether 1 mile,
Where you come up with a mile?
it's in there.
Yeah,
did I miss
that's,
that?
Well,
I think it's the only part of my brain
The only
that got
thing
put on paper
I read
for
this-
that section.
This is a proposed solar amendment to, and this may be a draft before you got to this one here.
Yeah.
But I read that, okay, we got the 100 feet, the 50 feet, but 1 mile for nuclear, it might be safer than the solar. I
Right.
don't know enough about that. That's why I think that could be in that. The other thing I have is, are we going to use any experts to help us in the review process? If somebody comes and presents something for a conditional use permit, can we utilize somebody maybe beyond us and say, could you help us with this review? Maybe an individual or whatever it is, because if we're relying on our expertise, we're already behind the 8 ball. So I just wondered if there's a way that in you guys' review process, if we could at least make some sort of an MOU or something with somebody that would help us in that review process. I don't know. I just think that would be prudent for us to find somebody in that area or whatever that could say, could you look through this before we get down this and give us your recommendation?
My caution to that is that that person is going to have a bias.
Well, we all are. We're all biased.
This is going to sound condescending, so I apologize.
Well, have at her. I do it all the time.
You weren't here when we went through this originally,
Right.
okay? The reason that it took us 6 months is that we hashed it and hashed it and hashed it. And when we came up with this, we found that it had the greatest protection for the constituency of Bannock County that we could possibly have. When we take an application, we know that it meets the requirements that we put into the conditional use permit. We don't make an approval or denial recommendation to the council. We just say, we reviewed it, here's the package, oh, by the way, it checks all of the spots. It's up to the applicant to prove that they meet all of these requirements. And if they do, by law, it can't be denied. So therefore, we don't ever make an approval or a denial on something along these lines. And we, as a team doing the review process, we remove all feeling, we remove all opinion, etc., and we check the boxes.
Okay.
And that's it.
And I'm good with that for most things, like we understand what a footing look, we've had experience in that. But we don't have nobody's got the greatest experience inside of the county with this? And I'm just throwing that out. I don't, and that's a great answer.
It's,
If they,
And that's where it comes down to in here. It says that they have the burden of proof. And
So-
if we as a board or the planning board have a question, then we can ask more questions to get the proof.
which could end up in this room here with, you know, at that point, you probably could listen to somebody that says, okay,
before you go, let me step back and share with you an item that occurred to me as you were talking about scale. We have found over the last 10 years, the efficiency of solar continues to improve, okay? To be able to create X amount of megawatts based upon efficiencies of plant panels right now, we know that it's going to take X number of panels, which because of their size and setbacks is going to generate the total number of acres that would be required.
okay,
10 years from now, we could probably say that same square footage is now producing X amount of megawatts, which now moves it into the next category for scale. But that's something that we're going to have to adjust as the technology improves. We know what we know right now, so scale is based upon what we know and what is being produced right now. As efficiency continues to occur, we're going to end up having to make some changes to this ordinance.
and I agree with that, because they already pointed out that the panels they're using now are already obsolete, and they can produce so much more. So there again, that's why I think if we have a separate chapter, whatever you want to call it,
This works perfect.
then we can go back in and tweak this one based on the best information we have. The only other question that I have is, it says that after 10 years, they have to, the 20% and the 120%. Why do we wait 10 years? It does say review it every 5 years. But I guess that was my only thing, is the language of after 10 years, we look at it to see what's the possibility of it being decommissioned. Does it have to be a hard and fast 10 years, or can it just be, I'm just asking that question, because that seems to be the general language. After 10 years, you're going to know long before that whether they're going to decommission it or not, because it's just not going to be.
We had that discussion the first time around,
Yeah.
too, and I want it shorter.
And
The solar companies want it longer.
right, and I understand why, but I guess I needed that information of why in the world 10 years.
So that said, that's based upon simple laws of economics.
Okay.
That's where that is generated.
So it's economics.
It's
as much
it's
okay.
economics, because the solar companies need to see a profit margin to make it. If we make it too tight, then they're ponying up a bunch of upfront money that I don't even know. And maybe that's a way that you just get rid of solar. You make it so financially difficult, even though they comply. Anyway,
Yeah.
it's a law of economics of where that 10 years comes
Okay.
from. We found that was, to the best of our knowledge, that was a balance that made it feasible and profitable for them, but yet still protected the county on the tail end, so that we didn't get stuck with the cost of a decommission, et cetera.
Because I do know that was when they first started putting up the wind. That was a discussion they had then, is how long, what's the lifespan of these? And then what does it cost to decommission the solar or the wind power? And is it's proven their life is a lot longer than what they anticipated. At least some of them are. I saw the other day one of them went flying off. I thought, holy cow, I need to be where that thing went flying off. But so, okay, and it's probably part of a business plan, and they'll probably defend that position probably when we get down to that conditional use. Okay. Sorry about all those questions.
No, that's
but-
fine. Back to nuclear for just a minute. Are there places in Bannock County that qualify as a low population zone? Or is all of Bannock County considered a low population zone?
Don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because as I'm doing some research while they're talking here, according to some of the stuff I'm reading, for a small modular reactor, that setback in a low population zone can be almost like the area of city impact. It can be the border of the project up to a mile is for the setback. So I'm just wondering if maybe we talk about that when we get to that part of the ordinance, that in low population zones, it can be less, but in, next to Pocatello, it does have to be a mile, or, again, I don't know if we have a low population zone here or not.
Okay.
Which could be in a definition too,
Correct.
right up front. What do we call low population?
I don't
Well,
see.
we
gotta
just
be
got back
good.
from Boise. There's a lot of low populations.
We went through all of it.
More cows than people.
Yeah, but I guess, to me, that needs to be in the definition of two, is if we are looking at the energy
And
ordinance.
I think we should probably delineate small modular reactors versus other, because that does change. And the other thing to be aware of is the factor that we have to probably bow to some of the national or the federal standards that will probably override ours, which theirs would probably be more stringent than ours would be, but I think we need to specify small modular versus the other, because as you pointed out, how the technology right now, small modular is the back of a semi, but in 10 years, it might be a bread box,
Yeah.
and you get the same output, so.
Yeah, one of the surprising concepts of that, speaking of a bread box, is that some of the technology that is moving is that you literally could have a small reactor in your home that just powers your home. It just takes care of all of your needs in your home.
Correct.
It's crazy what is being experimented and studied and tested right now relative to nuclear.
Yeah.
I had a guy tell me the other day, he said, I want to get one of those and just be self-sufficient in my own home. And I thought, it may not be that far off.
Well, the power companies will get their hands in it.
It'd probably be the same way as they do with wind now. You have to get on there. I mean, you have to be on their grid and they buy it back, or if you go off of theirs, you're off of it. They won't even charge you standby or anything else, but you're totally self-sufficient. That scares me a little bit. But there again, if the power company has put their infrastructure in to supply it to your house and you choose not to be on it, that's your choice, but you can't, that's the scary part about me, is with not knowing what we should know. We can't control that, but that's coming one of these days, here, just like a microwave. When that first went in, that was the neatest thing in the world. Now we've got air fryers, we have everything else. Okay, I think those were my questions.
Questions?
No, thank you, and my advice would be to continue to move forward and put it in this as a chapter in the normal ordinance book.
It sure works for a smoother edit, development,
Okay,
etc.
okay. Thank you. Again, great
Thank
work.
you.
We have a question in the back?
I do. I don't know if I'm allowed to speak, but.
Go ahead.
Since you're looking at all of these different ways of producing power, I didn't hear anything about geothermal, and that is also very small, very
Yeah.
contained, and has less hazards than some other methods.
Okay.
So I was wondering if that's going to be considered in this.
I think it should be added as an alternate.
Geothermal
source.
on a large scale, I don't know.
If it works.
Actually, when we was in South Dakota, there was a session, a class that I went to on this geothermal, and our area is really not ideal for it. There's certain areas that are,
Twin Falls.
but, I mean, of course, down by Lava possibly, but it's still out there a ways too. They're taking some of the wells that they're drilling and trying to change them over for geothermal.
Well, let's do this.
Raptor.
Let's do this real quick. Let's go ahead and